This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. If I'm honest, I have kind of had it in my mind for a little bit of a while that Strymon pedals, there's a certain amount of hype with them. They are not cheap pedals, and I think you kind of think of them as somewhat premium, although they are also kind of often digital modelling. I've sort of done a little bit of a 180 on this, and I just wanted to do a little bit of a video on that. These have been loaned to me by the folks that handle the PR for Strymon in the UK. They did offer to sort of like pay me to do some videos and ask what my fee would be, but I kind of have been interested in them anyway. So the Ultraviolet kind of surprised me. They sent me a Brig to check out, a Dig, and I think probably one of their more famous pedals, the El Capistan, which is where it all started. Now, a few interesting things about this company. You can actually find a quote from Pete, who is their main kind of DSP guy. "We don't plan on any sort of future obsolescence or expected life cycle for any of our products," he says. "We do the best we can with them and hope that they can stand the test of time based on their merits, as the classics do. And that's really the highest hope you can have when starting the design process for any product. That said, I think El Capistan has met or exceeded our highest expectations and continues to do so. That's kind of the interesting thing about these pedals. Although some of them are fairly old designs now by some standards, they do stand up really well. We've got version 2 of them coming out now in some ways, and the main difference is you've got the USB-C, and for a lot of them you've got like an additional control. Not hugely different, but I think the point was that Strymon have tended to get things quite right first time. So one of the first things that I noticed trying some of these Strymon pedals is that a lot of the analog world stuff, or what I'm used to, which is like the Line 6 modelled version of stuff, it tends to do the effect, but what Strymon do, they do like more. And that might seem a little bit of a weird thing to say, but it feels to me like even the El Capistan on its least kind of affected setting is kind of more tapey than a Line 6 model would be. It seems like they've tried to build in that character. In some ways, if you read online, some people kind of think it comes across as a bit cheesy, but to my mind, if you buy like a modelled version of a tape echo, then in some ways it's better to be able to dial in a thing to sound a lot like a tape than something that is really subtle. And for me, a lot of the Line 6 effects are a little bit on the subtle side. You know, even if you max like wow and flutter, you don't get anywhere near the amount of kind of artifacts and tape type stuff that you do in the El Capistan. I don't know if that's true across all the stuff, but the Ultraviolet as well, I felt like had a little bit more intensity to it than the real Univibe that J Rocket sent me a year or two back. The other thing is that these have actually made it onto pros pedal boards. You know, Tom Bukovac, Jeff Beck, John Mayer, people that care about the tone do still use these things in a way that some other pedals don't necessarily end up on folks' boards for various reasons. One of the things to worry about with a digital pedal, of course, is going to be that analog to digital conversion, and I think for a lot of people you'd think that that's going to potentially mess with your signal. Now, I didn't necessarily think this was a thing. However, what I did was I was messing around with the Dig in front of the Matchless Lightning, and then I thought, well, what would happen if I put a Merix LVX there? So, the Merix LVX is a very expensive pedal, but doesn't have analog drive-through. I was messing around with this, I've just bypassed it and plugged the guitar straight into this and then into the Matchless Lightning, so sort of as close to a guitar to amp thing as you could get. I'm putting one of these two pedals in there, bypassed, and I think you may or may not be able to hear the difference. I was definitely feeling like there was a difference, and I thought, well, is that just kind of placebo? So I got out my looper pedal and I did a little bit of a test, and you can see the waveforms here are actually quite drastically different, considering that you've got just something converting the signal to digital and back. So the Merix, you can see the waveform is, well, it's different to what the kind of direct signal and the Dig signal is. So it appears to me that there are a bunch of Strymon pedals that have this going on. They have the analog drive-through. If you're really concerned about your tone, that is one thing that Strymon seem to, for most of their pedals at least, get quite right. And, you know, there are a bunch of the pedals which have analog drive-through. There are some that don't. But that, for me, is one of the key reasons why you might be looking at a Strymon pedal, even though there are newer things, flashier things that have come out. If I was really concerned about preserving my signal now that I've done this test for myself, and this isn't shade at Merix or anything, I really like this stuff, and but it's kind of undeniable that something has changed about the direct signal there. That was one thing that I didn't really know up until this point. There are probably other pedals out there that preserve the analog drive-through. Let me know if there are examples that you know of the digital stuff that can do this. But the other thing I really like about the Strymon stuff is that the idea is that they've designed things to be somewhat simple to get quite good results. And for instance, with this is a dual delay. I did say in the video, there's kind of a bunch of settings here that I think it would take me a while to kind of explore if I was just using a menu system. On a knob, it's a bit easier. You can just see, right, that's a triplet quaver, that's a quaver, golden ratio, and you can just turn the knob and then listen to what is happening. And, you know, sometimes I don't necessarily see with my eyes particularly what it is that I'm looking for sound-wise, whereas with the Strymon stuff, there is an interface there which is, in general, very simple to use. Let me know if you're a Strymon convert. I think there's definitely a bunch of people out there that love Strymon stuff. There's also going to be a bunch of people out there that think it's a little bit overpriced, and it is definitely kind of premium priced gear. And, you know, you'd think that there is new stuff coming out that maybe might be able to knock it off of that spot, but there are certain considerations, you know, like if that analog through thing is really important to you and preserving your dry signal, then the newer things aren't always going to be better than the Strymon things, which not necessarily what I expected, and it was a bit of a surprise, and that was why I ended up kind of thinking, well, I'll make that as the video then, because that is, I was possibly thinking like a Strymon pedal's worth it, but if you're really concerned about preserving that dry signal of yours, then I think clearly from that test, for me, even a more expensive pedal was doing not as good a job as the Strymon pedal, as well as, of course, for me, I feel like the Strymon stuff sounds really good. I don't have or own any of it at the moment, but the Strymon Volante I used to own, and that was really cool. This Dig, I think, is my favourite out of the bits and pieces that I've tried. The Ultraviolet I really liked. If I wanted a vibe, that would be one I'd consider. The Brig, I'm not a massive guy who's using kind of bucket delays, and the El Capistan I thought sounded really good, but again, I'd go for something a bit more pristine personally, so I think the Dig would be the one of these that I would keep, especially because of the freeze function, if I was, you know, looking for that sort of thing. What's your favourite Strymon pedal? Let me know in the comments. I'll try and continue demoing some of these things. Love to know your thoughts. Cheers for stopping by.